Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
It's time to start the show and talk about the sports we saw. Inside jokes and takes from Danger and Battaglia, Bills and the Sabres and the Amherst. Who gave a microphone to these jerks? Gene's a big timer, a social misfits. Clueless to the title of the biggest buskeg hits. Chuck Munchie's goons have the last say. So thanks for your time, Mr. Mayo. Danger likes his cold ones and he likes his bears. But this is Rochester, cute Francesa.
Oh, who cares?
He's critical of Sean, he's critical of Al. And of course he married Sandy, cause she's Italian. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. With Danger and Battaglia.
Sorry about that, Gino. I'm cutting a little close. I know. I got to get my warm cup of coffee here, my hot cup of coffee before we come into the sports bar, knowing that we have to endure, what is it, 45 degrees in here today?
Might be. 47.
Wait, you get that thermometer, the temperature gauge?
I've got to go. I'm going to have to go buy one, I think. So, if it does show that it's in the 50s here, what do we do?
In our studio?
Yeah.
Besides contract pneumonia? Yeah, I don't know. We're working on day 35 of us not having heat in the studio.
Supposedly there was some Zoom call. There was some finger pointing with the landlord and whoever the previous landlord was and the company they hired to do maintenance. I don't care. If our company pays rent, heat should be part of the deal.
Heat the building. Welcome into the sports bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Slightly abbreviated today. It's certainly shorthanded today. Gino has some massive work to do at St. John Fisher today. You're calling St. John Fisher basketball with a tip at 5:30. Is that correct?
5:30, so we're going to just kind of sneak out. But don't worry. You're loaded up, as we always are on Tuesdays. So set the table here.
Yeah.
As working our way backward here. Terrible time, Timmy and Mike Danger for the first time together.
It's been
in
a while.
How many years?
Yeah, it's been a while. Terrible take, Timmy. I usually like to, keep my distance from his terrible takes, but I can't avoid it today. Terrible take, Timmy is going to be in here, and he's going to make us all look bad.
So he swings in the 5 o'clock hour from the NFL Network. Michael F. Florio. Now, fantasy football season is done, unless Danger. You want to kind of dabble. I would suppose like divisional round might be fun, or maybe you're still going on that. But Michael F. Florio, diehard Bills fan. So in the spirit of, hey, we're superstitious, we don't want to mess with a good thing, Michael F. Florio joining us at 4:45. And before that, today on the phone, it will be Michael Leone, head coach of the Rochester Americans. Just don't do what I did last Tuesday, Danger. That's
Call him Michael F. Florio.
Or Michael F. Leone.
Michael F. Leone.
Michael F. Leone.
Tough stretch for the Amherst here coming up with a couple at Lehigh Valley and then a roadie against Hershey. And they just had their 7-game win streak snap, so plenty to get into with Mike Leone when he joins us here in the 4 o'clock hour. And then, of course, later this hour, as we do every Tuesday, we catch up with Matt Perino, the Syracuse Post-Standard. Talk some Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, here we go. Bills-Ravens, and the Ravens, I thought maybe the line would have swung back. It didn't.
No.
It's still Ravens favored by a point. If this holds, Danger, this would be the first time in Buffalo Bills history they played a home playoff game and have been an underdog.
Yeah.
That's something.
It's a great chip to carry into the game. I love it.
It's an unbelievable chip.
I love it. I love that this is happening. That's an unbelievable chip to carry into the game. If it wasn't enough that you didn't get first team All-Pro or you didn't make the Pro Bowl or whatever your gripe might be, you're going in for the first time in the history of this franchise to a home playoff game as an underdog. Yeah, that's pretty good fuel. It's pretty good motivation. I'm into it. You can join us this afternoon on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub, 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester, goodsmokebbq.com.
So I'm very happy to report that members of the Buffalo Bills front office listen to the sports bar. And Danger, we got to give credit where credit's due. It wasn't me or you. It was a caller, and for the life of me, somebody just tweet back at us if it was you, because we were talking about, my gosh, how do you top Kyle Williams, who, if the Bills beat the Broncos as we expect, who would be coming in and actually doing the cheer right at the beginning of the game, the legend of the game, they call it. And today the Bills made it official. And again, it was a caller last week on our show. Hey, you got to bring back Fitz. Mm-hmm. So Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I'm sure will be shirtless, will be the legend of the game.
Of course he will be. And it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. We get a forecast yet? I haven't even looked ahead.
Oh, get a forecast?
It's going to be nice, isn't it?
No, define nice. It's going to be frigid, and you could have this
elements.
Yes,
elements are a factor.
Look, I'd rather have it windy and then make the Ravens completely one-dimensional. But if it's cold and they have Derrick Henry,
maybe you can pry that ball out of his grip a little bit easier if it's cold. I don't know. Well, that shows how much I've been doing. I did not look ahead to see what Sunday's forecast was. The weekend forecast was going to be. I remember looking earlier this week, and all I saw was gray, coldish. I'm like, nope, no sign of the sun. Okay, good. Just
look outside right now, bud.
Yeah.
We'll open up the window. See, you pull down the blinds here. I would open everything up. Just that, like on one of those days where you do have that little glow.
A couple
in the
of
sky.
peaks, yeah. Couple peaks. Not too bad. Speaking of this weekend and this weekend's activities, hey, you know what? We would love for you to join us Friday afternoon from 3 until 6. We're back at Three Heads Brewing on Atlantic Avenue for Friday Football Talk Live, Gino.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun where they are going to have the limited edition you say it, Danger here.
You can get a 4-pack to go for game day, for Sunday, of the limited run Leaping Hazy IPA Playoff Edition. That's only available at Three Heads. So if you want that, you got to come by Three Heads to get it to go on Friday from 3 until 6. We will be there live with that Leaping Hazy IPA Playoff Edition.
Playoffs?
Yep,
Don't
playoffs.
talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Playoff edition of Friday Football Talk Live. We'll have our friends from Freddy's Woodfire Pizza there as well. Let's get the pregame started Friday afternoon starting at 3. Three Heads, Atlantic Avenue, in the neighborhood of the Arts with the Fan Rochester.
You don't have to RSVP, but we love if you did.
We love knowing who's stopping by. No question. I believe Greg is in, one of our regulars, Chuck Munchia Pet on X. You can always engage with us on Elon's Twitter. That's the Fan Rochester at AKA Mike Danger or at Gene Battaglia.
Monica and Joey are coming. Saw them last night at trivia, but Joey's getting like this Runner of the Year award for one of the Yeah, so that so they'll be there, but I don't know how much for how long. So
I gotta look up to those two as like role models at this point, just to get the dad game running, game back in gear here. In my own personal life, I need a little inspiration.
So one of our listeners, Joey, he was in the U.S. Olympic trials last year in Orlando. He's still grinding it out, Danger. Did 22 miles yesterday.
Oh.
Around Coit Bay. I'm like, do you use the trails? Nope. I'm like, whoa.
They call him Joey Kipchoge. The guy is he's a machine. I love it.
Joe Whalen is his name, yeah.
Need some inspiration. Looking forward to seeing them on Friday. Looking forward to seeing you on Friday. Join us at Three Heads, 3 until 6. We'll be broadcasting live the sports bar for another Friday Football Talk Live, the playoff edition, 3 until 6 at Three Heads. All right, Gino, the where do we want to start here? We got the Fitzpatrick out of the way. That's big news. We kind of called that last week. We got a little bit of run this morning on our Odyssey Sports sister station, WGR, for a tweet that was directed at us, which is ridiculous.
This is absolutely ridiculous. And this happened during the show yesterday. I'm like, do we want to bring this up? And I'm thinking no, because this is just somebody completely baiting us. But then when you see this gets hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of retweets, and all of a sudden people start to believe it, and it was just whatever the account is, Ravens Flock. Basically, the gist was Matt Milano went on 95.7 The Fan and said all these disparaging things about Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, did he? I must have missed the part where we had Matt Milano on.
We had Matt Milano on with us yesterday. You didn't know? Wow. That's before you even recognize the fact that that's a dude that never speaks. I've never heard Matt Milano speak. He's never made available to the media. He's not made available for interviews. I've never heard the man speak.
He went up to the podium once, and it was just like, just ask me a question, Danger. Ask me any question. I'll do the role of Matt Milano.
Gene, you got a big game tonight at St. John Fisher University. How was your preparation for this match?
It was good.
Care to expand on that a little bit?
No, not really.
Why are you so pissy?
No, you are the expert.
You're not answering my question.
Yeah, he's not a bad dude. He just doesn't like doing this.
It's not his thing.
Not his thing. And you know what? I actually kind of respect that. Yeah.
It's totally fine. Boy, a lot being made of this matchup, though. And clearly the NFL knows they're putting it in the prime slot there on Sunday evening. And one of the things I think we'll talk to Michael F. Florio about is the matchup, Lamar versus this Bills defense, Derrick Henry versus this Bills defense. You heard Dan Orlovsky earlier on One Bills Live discussing some of the weaknesses that this Ravens team may possess.
For Buffalo, yes, it is huge to get penetration. If you had to ask me like the one specific matchup that I'm going to be fascinated to watch is in both the run and the pass, who does Buffalo put over Baltimore's right guard, Falele? Really good player. He's only done this throughout the season. His one thing that he has struggled with consistently is quickness. You got to win versus him with quicks. And obviously, Oliver, Smoot, Epinesa maybe in pass game stuff. I think that'll be a really interesting thing. So, yes, you have to get penetration versus Derrick Henry. You have to make sure you try to get him to stop his feet and make a cut, because if he gets going with momentum, he's tough to stop. I do think the really interesting part of this game when it comes to McDermott and Babbage is last week, Baltimore, for the first time all year, they put 6 offensive linemen on the field to run the football. So hear me out with this. They put 6 offensive linemen and Patrick Ricard on the field. That's 7 human beings that are 300 pounds or more. So my brain tells me there's no way if you're Buffalo, you could just line up with your 4-man front, your nickel defense versus that, and say, hey, here we go. Because it's just big body versus little body. I think it'll be very interesting to see how they counter and or plan for that, because it was a big part of what Baltimore did, and it was super successful.
Yeah, that's a hard matchup for any team to combat.
Wow, that sounds awfully familiar, right? 6, and yes, the Bills, they didn't have Pat Ricard. They have Reggie Gilliam. They were using a ton last week against the Broncos. Yes, that makes sense. But if you're not familiar, the Bills, their primary defense is nickel. They go with 5 defensive backs because Taron Johnson is so good. Well, sure, go with an extra linebacker. Put Dorian Williams out. You want to take Taron Johnson off the field? Or can Taron Johnson go back? I don't know. This is going to be a Bobby Babbage, Sean McDermott. How do they scheme this up? Because it seems to me like when he lays it out that way, do the Bills actually have the personnel to go head-to-head in a physical battle like this?
Yeah, when you talk about quickness, yes, Oliver needs to be quick. Maybe the rookie Carter is quick off the jump. When you talk about size, I would expect to see a little bit more of Jordan Phillips maybe in this matchup. This might be the reason why you had Jordan Phillips join this. You acquired him late in the season. Quentin Jefferson, same kind of deal. Guys that have some size and some experience. But when you hear Dan break it down like that with Ricard in there as a fullback, who's essentially another lineman being over 300 pounds, it's a tall order. Now, conversely, the Bills have had a ton of success throughout the course of the season. You mentioned Reggie Gilliam. I mean, when Alec Anderson is out there as that 6th offensive lineman, they've been able to trick defenses into believing that they're going to run, but they can also stretch the field out of that formation as well, and they've been doing it with great success, obviously, throughout the course of the season. So, Baltimore's going to have their hands full as well, and ultimately it could be, who has the ball last wins this game, but some good breakdowns happening here as we get closer to game day in terms of how the Bills can potentially stop the Ravens offense and what the Bills can do offensively against this Ravens defense.
We're going to talk to Kevin Ostreicher from the Locked On Ravens podcast tomorrow too, and one thing that the Bills have been good at, and this includes last week, hey, they might be down early, but they have been coming out so much better in the second half. This was always an issue dating back to last year, not an issue anymore. But there have been some weird games for the Ravens this year where they just let leads get away late. It certainly was early in the season, but that loss to the Raiders now, you look at that and kind of like, what's that all about? There's a reason why this game is being played in Buffalo, even though the Bills lost the so-called head-to-head tiebreaker.
Well, you kind of saw it even dating back to week 4. Yes, the Bills lost, but the Bills in that second half were starting to get it going there, and it got away from them based off of a turnover and a trick play. That was kind of like, okay, it's just not going to be their night, and Baltimore continued to pour it on, but throughout the course of the season, you're right, Gino. Even with a big lead, Baltimore did let teams back into it. You saw it to a lesser degree against Pittsburgh last week. You saw it earlier in the season against Dallas. They let Dallas back into that game, and yeah, some interesting and weird kind of losses and blemishes on that schedule for the Baltimore Ravens. Man, I can't wait. We have the game for you coming up here Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock on the Fan Rochester. Our pregame coverage gets underway at 9.
Yeah, no practice today as typical on a Tuesday, and the one thing we'll all be tracking is concussion protocol for Ray Davis. Would the Bills actually just go with 2 running backs, or are you promoting Frank Gore Jr. off the practice squad for this game?
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know that you would go with 2 running backs. Maybe if Gilliam is back there.
I'm thinking that they would. And maybe you're going, using that extra spot for something else here, maybe.
Yeah, it's possible. And not having Ray Davis hurts. It's certainly this team still overall health-wise is in far better shape than they were last year at this time. So you have at least that is encouraging. And I'm curious as to how the Ravens are healing up as well. Zay Flowers in particular, will we be seeing him come Sunday after he missed the wild card matchup against Pittsburgh?
Well, are there any threats? Bateman is still there, I suppose. I mean, it's really the tight end, right? Tight ends, I should say. Likely is good too. So that's looking at the forecast, Danger. It is going to be a game time temperature of 17. They're calling for it right now. Winds 10 to 20 miles an hour right now. Flurries or snow showers possible. Kind of vague in that category.
Downright balmy. Yeah. Can't wait. What else we got going on around the NFL? I mean, the coaching carousel continues. After we signed off last night, there was a bit of breaking news regarding the Dallas Cowboys coaching vacancy.
It's the Mutual Admiration Society, right? Because for Coach Prime, of course, you want to tell everybody that you're in demand. But then I'm going to stay, or whatever my next move is here. Yeah. The Cowboys find themselves in a bad spot because now, if they want to talk to a Ben Johnson or a Joe Brady or anybody else that's still in the postseason, you got to wait until after this weekend. That's not going to happen. So they're a little bit behind in that regard. Jerry has always been about the brand first. It's a mind-blowing stat to me, Danger, that in the last 25 years, there's only been 2 teams in the NFC that haven't made the NFC Championship game. One has a chance to. If they win on Sunday, and I'm not going to say there's a 0% chance, Washington in Detroit, Washington would break that spell. That would lead the Dallas Cowboys as the only team not even to get to the NFC Championship game. That's a joke for all that resources and everything else. And it's the way he has managed this team all along. So the idea that he reached out to Deion Sanders, and Deion knows the drill. He played there, for crying out loud. He wanted to go to Dallas until he didn't. You remember how that ended? He ended up in Washington after. So, yeah, Deion is kind of using Jerry. Jerry's using Deion. And I think it's just all kind of funny that the Cowboys don't have their act together.
Do you want to play the game where we try to predict which coach goes to which head coaching vacancy?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
All right, let's start with Dallas, since we're just talking about it.
Dallas is going to have to wait in the cycle.
And
get Bill Belichick. Why are you laughing?
Okay.
Once upon a time, I never could have imagined Bill Parcells landing in Dallas, yet there he was. And he didn't even seem to face Giant fans. They were like, okay, whatever.
You know who I like for Dallas? He's still coaching. He's the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia, Kellen Moore. I think if worse comes to worse, Jerry looks at what these guys are going to want. What Deion would want to come and be the head coach of Dallas is probably richer than what Jerry wants to pay his head coach, although it would add immediate relevancy to the Cowboys. It doesn't necessarily equal wins. He hasn't built a winning program just yet in Colorado. He's done a nice job. I think it's Kellen Moore in Dallas. What about the Raiders?
Funny how Pete Carroll interviewed there yesterday, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a process of elimination one.
You know who I think is going there? I think Ben Johnson goes to the Raiders.
What?
If Tom Brady is as involved as we're hearing that he is involved with the organization, and you don't have a GM, right? Immediately when they moved on from Telesco, we're like, well, that's so they can bring Belichick in. Was it? Or was it so they could say to Ben Johnson, you get to pick your GM. You get everything you ask for. Come to Vegas. Ben Johnson to the Raiders. That's my prediction.
You're not going to entertain Gruden going back there.
I don't think Gruden goes back there. I like Gruden in the NFL. I think Gruden with the Jets would make sense. I would listen to Gruden with the Bears. I would listen to Gruden with the Raiders. I don't know. You're not hearing his name in any of these interviews, right? Like his name isn't being thrown around as like a interview candidate. So fair or not, it sounds like he's being kind of blackballed and nobody's talking to Gruden.
Steve Spagnuolo hasn't even interviewed yet. I think he's going to finally.
Where do you think he lands?
With the Raiders.
Oh, you think he goes to the Raiders?
Yeah.
All right, humor me. What do you think about the Bears?
You think I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but I think it's for real.
You think Pete Carroll?
Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
It
interviewing tomorrow, right?
Correct.
Yeah. If that happens, I'm going to become a soccer fan.
I have talked to a lot of people who, colleges that want to have kids come. And, if you're a coach, you don't want to be the first one to talk to the kid. You want to be the last one.
Yeah.
Like that. Okay.
Close.
So who was the first guy the Bears interviewed, and they didn't really kind of move on that? Mike McCarthy goes in there and talks about the division and talks about how he's going to bring down Green Bay. He might have everybody eating out of the palm of his hand.
My heart wants Marcus Freeman. My head says Brian Flores. My head says Brian Flores. That they have an opportunity to talk to the defensive coordinator of the Vikings, a guy who's itching to be a head coach again, who's done a nice job in Minnesota. They get a defensive-minded head coach, guy who can connect with players, guy who's probably learned from some of the mistakes he made when he was in Miami, and a guy that would probably do it relatively affordably for a cheap organization. My heart wants Mike Freeman. My head says it's going to be Brian Flores. If it's Mike McCarthy, I've got issues, serious issues. What about Jacksonville?
I think that's where Ben Johnson ends up. I think that is a jock-sniffing owner that once upon a time paid Urban Meyer a lot of money. And so if it's about the money, if it's about a little bit of control, yeah, I think Ben Johnson ends up in Jacksonville like, hey, I can work with Trevor Lawrence here.
Yeah, but can he work with Trent Baalke? That's the question.
Well,
can Ben Johnson work with a guy who farts in the middle of a press conference? I don't know. The name that we haven't brought up yet is Joe Brady. And if Joe Brady is out there interviewing, I could see Jacksonville. I could see New Orleans. I could see either of those two teams falling in love with Joe Brady.
The Jets? We haven't even touched on the
Haven't
Jets.
touched
The
on the
Jets are like
Jets.
the forgotten team.
Rex Ryan.
Well, Rex had his interview last Tuesday, and it's not like anything is kind of moved after that, has it?
No, I could see Aaron Glenn with the Jets if they wanted to go in that direction. I could see Spagnuolo with the Jets if they wanted to go in that direction. He's got familiarity with the market. But yeah, the idea of Rex making his return to the sideline, yeah, probably not. Probably not. Just gonna throw that out there. Let's get to Matt Perino covering the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard. We'll get his thoughts on not just the win on Sunday against Denver as we put a bow on the wild card round after the Rams dispatched of the Vikings in Arizona last night. We'll also look ahead to Sunday's divisional round matchup against those Baltimore Ravens. It's Matt Perino, Syracuse.com, next on The Fan.
You're listening to the Sports Ball. Rochester. Why settle for the silence of your living room when you can have the thrill of sports talk? Ask your smart speaker to play 95.7 The Fan and turn your home into a sports arena. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Tuesday, your typical day off for the Buffalo Bills players, as Sean McDermott, talking yesterday, knows that Derrick Henry is going to be a handful.
He's been doing this for years, and he's really good at it. So I don't know if anybody's ever stopped him. So he's certainly at the top of his field and what he's been able to do for the duration he's been able to do it for. And like I said, Lamar and him make a heck of a 1-2 combination.
We'll talk Bills Ravens coming up next. Matt Perino, Syracuse Post Standard in the Shout podcast to join us. Ryan Fitzpatrick will be the legend of the game on Sunday. Sabres hockey tomorrow night as Carolina comes in at 6 p.m. We'll talk to Amherst head coach Mike Leone next hour. Fisher Houghton doubleheader, local college basketball coming up tonight here on The Fan. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader. The Fan Rochester.
They've raised the bar on Rochester Sports Talk. You're in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Yeah, we'll see. This is a unique offense in terms of their production and how explosive they are. It's a great combination, unlike any I've seen with Lamar and Derrick Henry and then you add the passing game and the scrambles and all that type of stuff. I think Coach Monken does a phenomenal job of putting those guys in position as well. So it's take it one play at a time and we'll see where it goes.
Sean McDermott on this weekend's opponent, the Bills, in the divisional round for the 5th consecutive season, hosting the Baltimore Ravens, 1 o'clock here on the Fan Rochester, as we welcome on in Matt Perino, the Syracuse Post-Standard, covering the team. And Matt, we knew that at the end of the season we heard Josh Allen say, hey, look, we're trying to win these games, but we're also trying not to show our cards all together. The Bills, looked a little bit different with the way they kind of dominated Denver's defense, the way they held onto the ball, the way they controlled the clock. They didn't show all their cards, though, did they? That would be a concern, I would guess, for the rest of the postseason, that they still have some tricks up their sleeve?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I think that's something that they're probably spent the whole season, the last 9 months, Brady in the offseason. He was asked about this yesterday, about just having the benefit of an entire off season to kind of plan this thing out. And I think actually it's interesting how good the Bills have been down the stretch, leaning on their run game and coming off of a game where you dominate in the run game against one of the league's best defenses. You put that on tape against the Baltimore team that's been good in both areas late in the season, specifically in the run game. I thought that they were pretty good watching back the Eagles game from a couple of weeks ago. While the Eagles did win that, I thought they did a pretty good job on Saquon Barkley for the most part. He still went for 120, but he's doing that against everybody pretty much at minimum. So I think with that being said, you wonder if there's not another layer to this offense, even with the jumbo package. And we'll track Alec Anderson this week, and he's got that calf injury. He played through it in the game. He returned after the injury. We'll track that. But I think there's more meat on the bone in the jumbo package in the passing game. And it's not just, play action, of course. I like that there. But, I think that there's some matchups that they can take advantage of this game, whether it be Keon Coleman one-on-one on the outside against Stevens, or maybe if Amari Cooper lands there when they're going heavy. There's another layer to this thing. And I'm sure when that game happened in week 4, the Bills had to have some of their staff. They maybe used it in the bye week. I wouldn't put that out of the realm of just planning for this eventual matchup. What's going to be the counterpunch to the way that the Ravens really stifled their offense?
Yeah, maybe it's just as simple as, hey, you have it on 4th and 2 with the 50. Let's not punt on the first drive. Let's kind of go. And to the Bills' credit, they could have kicked the field goal. You ended up 4th and 1. I'm talking about the Bronco pass there to Ty Johnson, amazing the backfield there. That Josh Allen found him that way. My question is about the three-headed monster here, Ty Johnson, James Cook, and Oh, Ray Davis. We're not going to know anything about Ray Davis, at least until tomorrow. If it ends up being just, can the Bills just go with 2 running backs in this game, Matt, or would you think they would promote somebody?
I think they end up probably bringing somebody up. Frank Gore Jr. makes a lot of sense, just because you got to protect against, okay, somebody gets hurt in this game, and now you're down that potential other option. They do lean heavily on the run game, and not just the backs in the run game, but in the passing game too. So I think they'd want some diversity there, different skill sets. Frank Gore Jr. is a little bit different than all 3 of the backs that are on the roster right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets an opportunity. I know Bills fans, he was like one of those Tyrell Shavers kind of characters from the training camp. There's so many Bills fans that are big Gore Jr. fans, some that thought he should have made the team over Ty Johnson all the way back in August, if you remember that. So I think that would be a kind of a cool thing for him. He might even get a jersey and not play at all. I mean, Ray Davis, it's been amazing, the ascension of Ty Johnson again near the end of the season. It mirrors in a lot of ways last season when he really started to come on late in the year. And every single game, he finds a way to put his fingerprint on the game. So no matter what happens, I still think they're going to lean heavily on Johnson and Cook, but you do want to protect against injury.
So much is going to be made leading up to this game, Matt, about the Bills' defensive line, their defense against the attack of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. And a lot is being made of the Week 4 loss, a Week 4 loss that didn't include Taron Johnson, that didn't include Matt Milano or Terrell Bernard. But I guess my question is less about the guys that missed that game and more about the guys who were in that game and the guys who will be in this game. Can the Bills get penetration against that Ravens offensive line? Can they use their speed? Because from a size standpoint, I have a hard time believing that any team in the league is going to match up well against the size that the Ravens offense provides.
I mean, the Eagles did it 4 weeks ago, guys. But the problem there is Jalen Carter is an absolute animal, and they don't have that. And now I will say my one pushback to that is Daquan Jones circa September 2023 is a real problem for this team and for the Baltimore Ravens. The problem is he hasn't been that guy, and he's played better over the last couple of weeks. Talking to him in the locker room after this last game, it just didn't seem – it seemed like he's pretty upset about what's been written, what's been said, a very what's the word I'm looking for? Agitated, I think, Daquan Jones. And I think that's a good thing. If you're Sean McDermott, if you're Bobby Babich, you want that guy to be a little bit upset and to play like it. And I think he knows what's on the line. He's very familiar with Derrick Henry, guys. Don't forget, he played 5 seasons against him or with him in Tennessee. So I think that, listen, it's all on the line this week. Like, they know what they have to do from 1 to 8 or 1 to 9, however deep the rotation goes. They know the kind of things they have to do in this game. They have to get penetration. They have to hit Derrick Henry in the backfield. If you let him get going, it's game over. And I think the Eagles were so successful, and I had to go back all those weeks to find a team that really had a good game plan for them. And, of course, they're arguably the best defense in the league, so you'd expect them to. But a lot of it came down to flying to Henry, hitting him in the backfield. And if you don't hit him in the backfield, right when he crosses the line of scrimmage, you can't let him get going. And the explosive runs, as we've talked about so many times, have been one of the big issues for this team. Those are the things that you got to kind of have to eliminate. And I think the second part of this conversation, outside of Daquan Jones, Oliver, and some of those D tackles, Matt Milano playing at the rate of speed that he did last week is the best thing going for the Bills right now. Because if he's that guy, he's had a hand in, stymieing Henry at times in previous matchups. And I know the one meme of him getting absolutely deked out of his cleats against Lamar Jackson, sure, that play did happen, but he's been a really big part of containing Lamar too. I think the Eagles had the blueprint for it. I know the Bills don't have the personnel on their defensive line that the Eagles do, but on the edge, I think that they do. And their edge rushers, Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, were superb at creating the pocket, containing him, setting that edge for Lamar. But then when you get there and you touch him, You can't let him get away. And they didn't. They were sacking him. They were hitting him. Those are going to be some of the keys that are going to go into this game.
Matt Perino, Shout Podcast, Syracuse Post Standard. Matt, you brought up Daquan Jones having a chip on his shoulder. Can you say that about the whole team? I'm actually kind of surprised the Bills are a 1-point underdog in this game. There's never been a Bills home playoff game where they've been an underdog. And this year, against a team that sure you lost to earlier in the year, but you ended up having a better record, Matt, I'm just a little kind of surprised. I'm wondering how that's going to kind of play out there in the locker room as the week goes on here.
Oh, my gosh. Can you imagine anybody more thrilled about this development than Sean McDermott?
Yeah.
He thrives in this kind of narrative space where people are doubting his team. And that's going to be the messaging. I mean, he was asked about this yesterday. He's like, what's the message to your team? And he's like, well, I'm in the tape portion of that. We're going to spend the next day coming up with the messaging. And he doesn't have to do any work to try to find it, right? Like, nobody thinks the Bills are going to win this game. All the public money is flowing in on Baltimore. And if you watch some of these national shows, I was watching a clip of Dan Orlovsky. He's one of the few national voices I respect and do like watching on a weekly basis. The problem is usually it comes while he's on the First Take show. And just watching the dynamic between Orlovsky and Stephen Smith and Shannon Sharp as they kind of discuss this game, there is such a disrespect for the Bills and what they've accomplished nationally, or at least that's what comes across from some of these folks. And I think I personally think it's off the mark. I think the Bills are very much capable of beating this Baltimore Ravens team. And I think way too much stock has been put into a Week 4 game, which so many things. You could talk about the defensive guys not being there. Amari Cooper, whether or not he's a big part of the game plan or not, changes the math for how every team has to defend them in the passing game. So I think Sean McDermott, with all that said, is absolutely loving this. I think they're going to be asked these questions all week. And as long as we can get to the end of the week without some fake fan account that puts out a weird Matt Milano quote, and apparently I just got sent it. Now there's a Kyle Hamilton one that's kind of rummaging around on social media. So
was he on our show too? I mean, like we had Milano on our show yesterday. Apparently.
Yeah, it was your show. Yeah. Nice. All right.
Let's talk a little bit more about that Bills defense, because we talk about everybody on the team having a chip on their shoulder with Vegas not respecting the line, tilting in the favor of the Ravens. But Rasul Douglas was an interesting character after the win against the Broncos, and he was kind of feeling himself, and Ed Oliver kind of feeling himself. The Bills are obviously paying attention to what's being said about them. You can't get off the field on third down. That was the thing that Douglas pointed out. How do we do today about getting off the field on third down? And you take away that opening drive touchdown, and the Bills' defense was spectacular against the Broncos on Saturday. Is that a good thing for them to be feeling as confident as they're feeling here going in, or do they have to kind of refocus and re-energize and really just focus in on their job in that moment, the idea that you have to stop two of the most explosive offensive players in this league come Sunday?
Yeah, I think that, it's a big accomplishment because there was so much doubt about their ability to do that, even against a Broncos offense that doesn't even come close to what the threats that the Ravens pose. But you're right. I think they all were kind of feeling themselves a little bit, but there was also a looseness to it. I think sometimes in the NFL, when you're playing up against the elite of the elite every week, sometimes we look at these athletes and we put them on these pedestals of mental focus and clarity and unflappability. But sometimes when things don't go well, you have to wonder, how much self-doubt is there? How much do you think internally, can I do this? And when you go out and you play the way that defense played, it was probably reassuring in so many different ways. So now it's almost like that medicine coming at the perfect time, right? But then now the ultimate test begins. And what's crazy about this playoff run here is it's going to be 3 straight games if the Bills keep advancing of test after test after test. It's like a December in a fall semester of a college course where the professor just keeps throwing absolute bangers at you, and you're staying up to all hours of the night. You're running on coffee, and it's going to be tough. And it starts this week. And I think, I don't know if I'm in the bold prediction game this early in the week and this early in the playoffs, but I do think that the winner of this game wins the Super Bowl. And I know that's probably hyperbolic and crazy, knowing the Chiefs are up next on the road, and whoever ends up coming out of the NFC, I mean, the Eagles and the Lions are both really good. But this game, to me, is between two really complete football teams that do so many things offensively that I feel like can win in so many different variety of ways. It's going to be good. And I think from a Bills fan's perspective, you got to love the fact that it's happening at Highmark.
I love it, Matt, and I love the fact that we're all just kind of penciling the Chiefs into the AFC championship game. Matt, you're a baseball guy, and the year the Boston Red Sox finally won the World Series, it would have been special anyway, but it was super special that you did it in that way against your longtime rival. Yep. You vanquished the Yankees. Does that have to be part of the story here, that the Bills finally vanquish Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs?
It's such a great question, Gene, because I've asked fans, friends, family, fans that come to our live shows. I popped this up all year long as the Chiefs haven't really felt like the Chiefs. It's like, could you imagine a scenario where they finally go to the Super Bowl after all this and they don't even have to beat the Chiefs on the way? And I think the overwhelming response that I've gotten back is, who cares? It's all about getting to the game, getting and finally having the parade and all that, and having Josh Allen in this era of Bills football break through. And doesn't it feel like when we're having a conversation about the elite quarterbacks, Joe Burrow just gets a seat at the table consistently year after year, despite the injuries, despite the lack of playoffs, because he went to a Super Bowl. And it places you into this higher realm in the conversation. And so I think, me personally, like thinking back, how would I have felt about this 10 years ago as a ravenous fan during the drought era? I probably would have said the same thing, but it will have a little bit of a weird feeling if they end up hosting Houston for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. But again, guys, I'm as confident saying as anything I've said all year, and I know the year's only 10 days old or whatever, but the Chiefs beat the Texans this Saturday.
I was gonna ask you that next. I mean, we are very, very quick to pencil in the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, and they've earned that. They've earned that respect over the course of the time and all the accomplishments that they have. And Houston hasn't looked as good this year as they looked last year. But are we that quick to dismiss Houston, given that they're coming off a win at home? And really, the last time the Chiefs played together in a meaningful game was Christmas.
Yeah, but I like that for them. Out of all the teams that could potentially be affected by something like that, I feel like the Chiefs are the team that just won't be. And they're so good off of rest under Andy Reid. Andy Reid historically good, and it's not surprising knowing that Sean McDermott comes from his tree, and Sean McDermott's equally as good with rest. And so I think that won't really matter. And the thing for the Texans is that I just think that they're limited, and I think that the Chiefs defense rested Chris Jones healthy. They're going to probably take Nico Collins out of that game. I think C.J. Stroud is just begging on the road at Arrowhead to throw some inexplicable interceptions. But, hey, from a Bills fan's perspective, if the Texans somehow find a way to win and have to come to Orchard Park for an AFC title game if the Bills beat the Ravens, I think you sign up for that every time.
Matt, last one for me, and hear me out on this, because there is one little player personnel thing we'll keep tabs on. That's Codrington. I'm saying, I feel like I'm alone on this. Yes, I know 1st and 10, you want Khalil Shakir out there, but more often than not, what happens after a punt return? It's a TV timeout. So maybe if you know that's coming up, I'm in the camp of, hey, have your best players on the field at all times. I want to see Shakir return some punts here.
Okay, so I don't have a huge problem with this, and I think the other thing that I think you get by using Shakir in this role is you get an extra roster spot that you can use somewhere else. And maybe if you want to do some different things creatively defensively, and maybe you want to activate Kyer Elam and find a way to get him on the field when Zay Flowers is out there or something crazy like that. I don't know. I'm just using that as an example. I don't think that Kyer Elam is not that far out of the doghouse to where he's probably playing in this game. But I like what you're saying there, especially with a hamstring injury with Codrington. You're going to really want that to be 100%. before you let him go out there. And I didn't think enough about this last week. What makes Shakir so good is he's like a bowling ball, like a pinball. He just, you know what I said to Joe Biscaglia in the press box? He reminds me of a human version of a bumper car. Every time he's like out in space, guys cannot tackle him. And so I think to your point, if you can get an explosive return in this game, and maybe if a Baltimore Ravens team isn't super fearful of a Khalil Shakir compared to the speed of Codrington, yeah, sure, run it out there, and especially if it gives you some creativity with the rest of your roster.
I know you and Ryan have a lot going on this week as we get ready for Sunday. Matt, what about the Shout podcast? Lay it all out for us here so we can get more of your work.
So we got Trey Wingo. I caught up with him yesterday. That's up.
Nice.
We'll have a three big questions pod tonight, which is always a good one. We have some fan involvement. Tomorrow is the Staples Show. Thursday I have Ted Wynn from The Athletic coming on to break this thing down from a film perspective. And then we are going to be live again at Wing Nuts this week. We're running it back live. So if you're coming in for the game, come and hang out at Wing Nuts, have some wings, talk Bills with us. We'll hang out. We'll watch some of the Chiefs game, and then the NFC game. It'll be a good time, and then it's game day.
I can attest that that's a fun time with Matt and Ryan. Certainly well worth the trip out there, Matt. Appreciate your time, buddy. We'll see you at the stadium on Sunday.
Later, boys.
Thanks, Matt. Matt Perino covering the Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard. Read his work at syracuse.com. Find the Shout podcast wherever you get your shows. And we include that in the free-to-download Odyssey app as well, Audacy. All right, we'll take a break. 4 o'clock hour with Mike Leone, Rochester Amerks head coach. Michael F. Florio, NFL Network. We'll talk some Buffalo Bills with him. Terrible Take Timmy joining us for half of happy hour this afternoon. That's all on the way. 866-4326 if you want to pull up a stool and join us. 585-866 for FAN.
You're listening. WNIBF Rochester, the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
Tuesday, the typical off day for the Bills players, and that will be a practice tomorrow. Sean McDermott knows there's going to be a step up in weight class facing the Ravens offense.
I mean, they're a 1-2 combination. I don't know if the NFL has ever seen that type of combination. Power, speed, explosiveness, Lamar's ability to throw the ball. Like I said, I think Coach Monken has done a heck of a job of crafting this offense and making it very, very hard to defend.
Former Bills quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick will be coming back. He will be the legend of the game. Buffalo Sabres back in action tomorrow against Carolina. Coming up later this hour, we'll talk to Amerks head coach Mike Leone. 3 games in 3 days coming up this weekend. Got St. John Fisher basketball tonight here on The Fan. The doubleheader begins at 5:30. Houghton, the opponent. Gene Battaglia and the sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
I think the Ravens, what they're going to get with Josh Allen and this offense is a group that's humming on a level that they haven't seen in the past number of weeks. And I think it's going to be good on good. It's going to come down to a shootout. And I really think it's going to come down to who has the ball last year.
They're going to go into the game with something to prove, being the underdogs in terms of the point spread. So they're going to have that extra motivation.
Mike Danger.
This matchup, of course, will have everybody focused on the 2 MVP candidate quarterbacks. How will the Bills defensively stop Lamar Jackson, stop Derrick Henry? It's going to be a little bit tougher against the Ravens. There's more size, there's more physicality there, so they're going to have their challenges, but they're playing with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder.
Gene Battaglia.
This is not going to be a field possession game. I think it's a number of possessions game here that, you know what? You're not going to have much time on the field because we're just going to keep the ball. If they are able to execute that well on offense, the way they did against Denver, against Baltimore, all right, I like their chance.
Sure, absolutely.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Welcome back to the Sports Bar. We were just off the air discussing last night's wild card finale. Just weird vibes all around with last night's game, right? I mean, LA supposed to be the home team. They're playing in Arizona. The stadium is filled with retired Minnesotans, a lot of Viking fans.
Yeah, it seemed a little more Viking than Ram there. The Ram whose house guy was yelling, but it's not really their house. And oh yeah, there was Sam Darnold is the pumpkin once again here. That's the storyline coming out of this, right? Because we know the Rams are good. Hell, they start out 1-4, and what does that make them since that point? Like in games that actually matter, 9-1 now. 11-1 after that. I'm not counting the Seattle finale. They kind of used that as a quasi-bye, and Sean McVay knew exactly what he was doing, saying, you know what, doesn't matter to the 3 or the 4. We're going to have to go to the same spot, and we like our chances going up against Minnesota. Back to Sam Darnold, Danger. What do you do if you are Minnesota? You're still not letting him go. You still have to look at the big picture here, and that
so many Viking fans that I talked to, just so emotional. The last 2 games, that's who he is. That's who he is. We saw him the last 2 games. Completely forget about the 14-win season. Just focus on the last 2 games where he had pressure on him. His offensive line is banged up, and they didn't protect him. 9 sacks. 9 sacks last night against the Rams.
9 times.
And he looked like his ghost-seeing self again. I think you franchise tag him. I don't know. Look, J.J. McCarthy could end up being a great NFL quarterback. But I'm curious about the injury. I'm curious about his knees now. And I don't think you're going to get 14 wins out of J.J. McCarthy his first year as a starter.
I think one thing is off the table, and that is go back like a month thinking, well, for all these quarterback-needy teams that are not going to be in a position to draft one of the top quarterbacks, and mind you, this isn't a great year to be drafting a quarterback, could you offer up your first-round pick to Minnesota and do it that way, knowing that they have Sam Darnold? And no, now you're not doing that if you're Minnesota.
No, I agree. And I think Darnold clearly cost himself millions over the last couple of weeks. If you franchise tag him, we normally view that as a hostile move. But in this case, it'd be more money than Darnold has ever made in the NFL. It'd be a hefty price for the Vikings to pay for one additional season with Sam Darnold. And if Darnold does look like what he looked like the last 2 weeks, well, then you go ahead and play the kid. But there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, of having McCarthy sit for another season behind Darnold to get into that role in year 3, much like the Packers have done for, a generation now with how they've kind of gone through their quarterbacks.
Do you know the line for this Rams-Eagles game? Take a guess.
I'm going to say Eagles -2?
It's Eagles -6.
Jeez.
Like, wait a second. Whoa.
Jeez. I mean, the Rams, we'll go ahead and put them in the category of the team that nobody wants to play. I wouldn't want to play the Rams. I think the Rams can win that game. I know Philadelphia's on one. They look really, really good right now.
I'll put it this way. If the Rams beat Philadelphia, they're going to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
Like, you really think that the way that team is playing, and you put them in the neutral field up in Detroit?
They barely tapped into Puka and Cooper Kupp yesterday.
They need to.
They need to. He's throwing darts. The defense is low-key nasty all of a sudden in L.A. Yeah, I can't believe it's that wide of a spread.
The thing, too, is this the best we've ever seen Matthew Stafford? He's 36. I'd say yes. People are saying, no, I've never seen Matthew Stafford be this clever and this smart, and he's just playing the best football I've ever seen, even with that stupid forward pass that they originally ruled a fumble.
Yeah, that was a big play in that game. And hard to say that they got it wrong. I mean, I guess if you look at it, it looks like he's moving his arm forward, even though you kind of can see he's fumbling the football. He's very careless, and they got away with one there. That was a turning point for sure. But you're right. He's throwing the ball with precision, accuracy, velocity. Yeah, he's playing some really good ball right now, and the Rams are definitely a threat to the Eagles come this weekend. We're going to get to Mike Leone, Rochester Americans head coach. He's stopping by the sports bar. We'll get him on the phone here in about 15, 20 minutes.
If I can go back to one thing Matt Perino said, and if you missed that, you can download the Odyssey app. You can just pick the segment there. It'll be there. Matt was fantastic there. But the idea, if the Bills are getting past Baltimore, I'm saying if here, okay? And I haven't made my final choice on this. We're going to wait until later in the week. Would it be better to have the story written that you got to go to Kansas City, or would you prefer Houston?
I think it's a who cares. I think what a lot of people would say is that's a giant Francesa.
Oh, who cares?
Because all you really want is just to get back to the Super Bowl.
Well,
doesn't matter how it happens.
I would say this, that when you're watching Kansas City beat up on Houston, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of that team, and that's kind of what we're all expecting. But if somehow Houston pulls this off, and this league is weird, I don't think that's going to take any. It's not going to tarnish a potential Super Bowl run. No. In fact, you should celebrate. You're going to be home the following week.
No question. You don't have to apologize for who's on your schedule and winning the games that you're supposed to win. And if it does turn out where Kansas City somehow chokes and Houston would have to come, if the Bills were to beat the Ravens, have to come to Orchard Park, you don't have to apologize for that. You play who's on your schedule. What does Joe Brady do after every game? He tweets out 1-0. That's really all that matters. Just win that one game. We'll talk to Mike Leone here in a little bit. We'll get into some Rochester Amherst hockey. We'll also talk to Michael F. Florio here before we get to happy hour at 5 o'clock. St. John Fisher basketball doubleheader tonight on the Fan. Tip-off at 5:30. We have time for your calls at 866-4FAM. Before we do that, just a reminder, as people are RSVPing to us on X at the Fan Rochester for Friday Football Talk Live playoff edition. We're going to be live at Three Heads in the neighborhood of the Arts on Atlantic Avenue Friday from 3 until 6. And we'll have 4 packs to go for the game on Sunday. The limited run Leaping Hazy IPA playoff edition.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs?
You kidding me? Playoffs?
Playoffs.
I just hope we can win a game.
So come get your Leaping Hazy IPA Playoff Edition limited run to go while we're there from 3 until 6. Three Heads Brewing on Atlantic Avenue in the neighborhood of the arts. We'll have Freddy's Woodfire Pizza. We'll have plenty of friends and guests and regulars hanging out. Pete is saying that he's going to pay off his bet and show up. Pete, the Jets fan, show up wearing a Bills jersey.
Pete, you're a man of your word.
We love that for you, Pete. We'll look forward to seeing you Friday. That's 3 until 6. Three Heads Brewing in the neighborhood of the arts on Atlantic Avenue with the Fan Rochester.
One of our favorites, Brad in Rochester, joining us. You can join us, too, at 866-4FAN. Brad, what's up, buddy?
Hey, the narrative is going to work as long as we win. If we go to Kansas City, it's Mahomes, Allen again, and the Bills got to get over the hump. If it's Houston, okay, we're avenging our only other loss in the AFC this year because we would have beaten Baltimore. We now have to go and beat Houston to get to the Super Bowl. It looks really good for the narrative part of things. And I do love Fitz with the sweater coming on this week.
Brad, was that you last week that called us and said it needs to be Fitz as the legend of the game? I want to say it was either you or Matt in the city.
I think it might have been Matt, but I agree with you, Brad.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate the call. 866-4FAN.
866-4326. We'll get to Mike Leone, Rochester Americans head coach, here in about 15, 20 minutes or so. And Terrible Take Timmy stops by the sports bar coming up here during happy hour after 5 o'clock as Gino heads over to St. John Fisher for a doubleheader of action tonight. St. John Fisher men's and women's basketball.
Mike from Rochester has a question for us. Mike, what's up, buddy?
Hey, can you guys tell me why Jordan Phillips isn't playing?
Yeah.
What's going on with Jordan Phillips? I don't see him on the injury report.
So he's been out there. He's not out. He's part of the rotation. I think that's just what it comes down to. And against Baltimore, when you need a little bit more size, or you would assume that you need some size, you also need some quickness. Phillips you might see him a little bit more come on Sunday.
Yeah, he's the fourth man in the D tackle rotation right now.
Yeah.
So that's all it is. He'll be active on game day, but
he's been active.
Yeah. He's just not getting as many plays.
Right.
So.
I mean, I think you want your starters, you want Daquan and you want Ed Oliver to be impactful, but there are certainly going to be situations where those guys are coming out and a guy like Phillips is coming in. So be on the lookout for him. But Phillips is there, both he and Jefferson. I don't see Jefferson as much. I see Phillips on the field with some regularity. But if you need size, they're big bodies. Big bodies. I don't know if they have the speed and the quickness to penetrate, and I think that's going to be key against the Ravens if you want to try and get Derrick Henry in the backfield. Dan Orlovsky was on One Bills Live earlier, too. He mentioned this X factor in this matchup come Sunday.
I really believe this game in many ways will come down to what quarterback kind of plays their game. What quarterback can handle the moment, and when he doesn't have to do too much, don't do too much. And when you have to kind of go make a play, make that play. And so because both of these players, while remarkable, have had a lot of their career when they've done just that and have had moments when they've tried to do too much or, and gotten ahead of themselves a little bit. And I think whatever guy kind of plays to that disciplined style and then 4 or 5 times ratchets it up when it's needed, I think goes a long way to seeing who wins.
Matt Perino brought up a point, and just a light bulb went off in my head right now because earlier in the show, you and I were talking, wait a second, if the Bills do not have Ray Davis for the game, well, they're going to have to promote a running back, right? Not necessarily. You could use that in another area. Like I brought up with Matt, hey, if Codrington does not go, I thought Khalil Shakir was pretty good. And considering that more often than not, after a punt, there's a TV timeout, why not use him? Matt agreed with that, and he brought up the point. You could use the roster spot for something else. Last week, we didn't even talk about this. Back on the practice squad, a guy I really, really like, big wide body in Eli Ankou.
Oh, yeah.
Bring up Eli Ankou this week.
He's back.
Bring him up. 3rd and 2, plug him in there. Eat up space.
Yeah, going to need that. We'll have the game for you coming up here Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Our pregame coverage gets underway at 9 a.m. Hey, I want to kind of take a little bit of a right turn here before we talk some Amherst hockey with Mike Leone. And I mentioned it yesterday, Gino, but I think it bears some repeating. Because, the NBA is going to slowly start to creep into our lives here as football season winds down and you're looking for more action and more things to talk about here during the course of the week. And if the NBA, in my opinion, wants more eyeballs on their product, they should do as the Knicks do, an NBA stat that has been absolutely consuming my thoughts right now. The Knicks have the top 7 3-man lineups in the league by minutes played. 10 of the top 12 3-man lineups in the league by minutes played. And it's not a surprise if you know Tom Thibodeau. He plays his guys. He plays them a lot. But what I love about it is it's the actual antithesis of load management and how easy it is to root for guys who love to play, who want the minutes. There's so much fun last season. They're doing it again this season. And if the three-point shot and load management are the two biggest issues with the NBA right now, I'd encourage some fans to go watch more Knicks basketball because I feel like they're doing it right.
Yeah, and then they lost to Detroit last night.
Yeah.
That's gross. Now, I guess Detroit, this isn't, they're playing much better, but this is the test, right? If the Knicks end up, in the conference final, or dare I say the NBA final, ooh, yes, I can say that.
On January 14th, I'm telling you right now, we're going to be talking some Knicks basketball again later this season because I think they're doing it the way I wish more NBA teams did it, where they're playing their guys, they're playing them a lot, they're easy to root for, they're a lot of fun, and at minimum, you could say, well, that's a team that has some heart. They're out there and they're absolutely grinding.
Well, Josh Hart last night talking about how we're losing games we should be winning, and like this, the bar's raised in New York, and I think that's a really good thing here.
Yeah,
as far as that. Quick note here, because I saw this today. I'm like, wait a second, huh? Do you miss ESPN Radio? I'm not talking about like the ye old days of it. No. Like today, the network unveiled their new weekly lineup.
Oh.
Danger, you work in this business. 6 to 10 a.m., unsportsmanlike. Chris Canny, Evan Cohen, Michelle Smallman, Clinton and Friends, 10 a.m. to noon. Joe and Q will be talking noon to 3. Apparently that's a betting show. Freddie Coleman and Harry Douglas go against us in the afternoon. Amber and Ian, 7 to 10. Game night, and then Sports Center all night. They don't even try anymore in the overnight. That's just simulcast ESPN. Notice who's not on here. Greeny's radio show has gone away.
Oh, look at that.
Look, ESPN is in trouble on a lot of different fronts. They are bleeding money, and I just want to point this out. It's not the medium of sports radio. It's the company. A company a decade ago, they stopped developing talent. Look at this lineup I'm talking about.
Well, if they can develop anything on this lineup and make them noteworthy, I'll pay attention. But they have shown in the last decade or so that they haven't been able to do that. Rather than revert to the names like Greeny. And if you're Greeny, if you're SVP, if you're any of the other bigger names at the network who used to do radio shows, you're getting pulled in different directions. And sadly, the 2 hours that you're spending on the air live every day needs to be put towards hosting NBA games on, for the postseason.
Yes, that's
hosting Sports Center late at night because you've carved out this niche for yourself. So, we can all romanticize about what it was when it was Mike and when you had Coward on ESPN and Levitard and a lot of really, really good shows.
Van Pelt and Russillo.
SVP and Russillo was fantastic, right? And since those guys most of those guys didn't have any sort of radio background. They're just guys that were developed and talented guys that took the coaching and turned their shows into behemoths. If any of these shows take hold, I'll be surprised, but I'll also be encouraged that there is somebody there at the 4-letter that's actually working with their talent and trying to get them on that level that we've kind of come to expect from sports talk radio. We'll see. We got to get to Mike Leone. You got to get to St. John Fisher. Are you gonna head out now?
I think I will do the update.
Okay.
We'll keep you updated.
All right.
Hear what Sean McDermott has to say. We'll get to Mike Leone, and then if you want great sports talk, Terrible Take Timmy will be stepping in.
Saying that with your tongue firmly in cheek for happy hour. We get a half an hour of Terrible Take Timmy.
Johnson is average.
Yeah. Lamar Jackson, overrated. That was a master stroke.
That was masterstroke.
Yeah. My first take, and I don't know if it's Lamar Jackson is overrated. Okay. We'll get to Terrible Take Timmy here in the 5 o'clock hour. He'll join us after happy hour. We'll also talk some Bills Ravens with Michael F. Florio from NFL Network, who stops by in a couple few as well. But up next in the sports bar, we check in with Amerks head coach Mike Leone with the Amerks on a tough road trip ahead. Lehigh Valley, Hershey, in the hole as well. We'll get his thoughts on the team as it stands right now. Mike Leone next on The Fan.
Neat or on the rocks? It's the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the